Well, would you look at this? Somebody's come by to check out what a totally random stranger thinks about this year's best video games. Surely you're a bit standoffish right now, because like I said, you have no idea who I am. In my opinion, may be total garbage. But you're just gonna have to find that out for yourself.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Before I jump into these and potentially start a riot in my comment section for the first time since my Red Dead Redemption fishing video, I'd like to go over the most important aspects of a game that would have me place these upcoming titles and hopefully provide some justification as to why I think they should be where they're at. If you've heard me say it once on this channel, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. Literally over 1,000. I love a good story. I appreciate a compelling narrative across various contexts and mediums, but there's something uniquely special about video games. There's an amazing amount of detail that you're able to experience more so than just an hour and a half or even as much as a 3-hour movie. Character development can be expanded on profoundly. Concepts that take time to develop can do so. The interactivity with characters brings you closer to the story and to those that are in it. It's actually unfortunate that while gaming has boomed over the years, there are still a good amount of people who don't play video games and will never be able to experience some of the titles that I hold dearest and share these experiences with other people. Not unless they get adapted into some major hit TV show, which in a lot of ways still aren't as good as the original. I'm a sucker for a good story, and in my opinion, it can be the most important aspect of a noteworthy title. With story goes hand in hand things like voice acting, motion capture, dialogue, and everything that helps convey the storyline itself. While a story might have a really strong foundation, if the characters aren't likable due to the absolutely terrible dialogue...
That is a direct order.
Well, Captain, screw your order. This isn't about you, it's about me.
Or horrible voice acting...
You killed him! That's enough, Victor! So much death!
Serena's right. Because of Quan Chi's magic, my realm's people are no longer poisoned by sunlight. We've finally escaped the shadows.
Trying to stick with the narrative can be a little painful and degrade the experience to the point where it isn't worth it. Other aspects that are important, but not deal-breaking, can be things such as gameplay mechanics, which include the game doing what you want it to do when you want it to do it, graphics, and bugs.
The women's revolution has turned into the women's evolution.
I'm still firm that no matter how popular the trend might be to have a game released broken only to be fixed over time, it is unacceptable.
Unacceptable condition! Unacceptable!
As for my grading system, I've been ruined by the American educational system, and if that sounds weird to bring up, it includes my 1 to 10 scale for rating anything. Most mid-range games are 7s, nothing special, appreciate the experience, probably wouldn't play it again though. 6 is like I barely made it through, and 5 and under is pretty ass. Most good games I would qualify as an 8, amazing games are 9s, and there are so few 10s out there, which is exactly how I think it should be. You start labeling every great game as a 10, it diminishes those that are truly life-changing. Everyone has a couple 10 out of 10s, but if you have more than like 3, you got some hard choices to make. I shouldn't have to say this, but for those of you that may be too thick to know that a thorough review of these games is going to include spoilers, this is your warning now. If you'd like, I've got playthroughs of every game I've listed on my channel, so you can go watch those and come back. It should only take you a few days or weeks. But here in this video, I gotta say my piece, and I'm ready to stand on business with anyone in the comments. Now that this is out of the way, here's my list of the top 5 games of 2023. The first, which is the bottom of the top 5, is Spider-Man 2. This is an absolutely great game, but who didn't anticipate this being the case? Insomniac did wonders with the first Spider-Man video game, and it carries over into Spider-Man 2 with one of the most visually stunning games on console in general, not to mention that its mechanics are so fluid and natural. There isn't much more that someone could ask for in a Spider-Man game, and when we did, Insomniac answered. They brought the ability to slingshot from a stationary position, not only from dedicated spots around the city, but from unlocking an ability, which is not hard at all to do. From a slingshot, you can ride this speed wave until you inevitably decide you want to open up your web wings and glide through the entire map. The web wings are arguably the best new addition to the game that they added. I didn't use fast travel once throughout my time playing Spider-Man 2, and I still managed to 100% the game within the first 72 hours of its release. With that achievement comes a few gripes that kept it from climbing this top 5 ladder. The side missions.
Didn't you just finish telling me how busy you are?
Yeah, but I always have time for my community.
While a good majority of them are much more tame in terms of how tedious they feel in comparison to the original Spider-Man, unfortunately, it still just feels like purposeless filler. I did sincerely appreciate some of the side missions that had their own cutscenes, as it shows the amount of attention they dedicated to these side quests, but others still had that feeling of being hollow, arcadey minigames. Who knew that the side missions, including saving the environment, were going to be even more boring than playing as Mary Jane? Which, of course, brings me to my second point. Why in the fuck are we still playing as Mary Jane? Spider-Man 2's stealth missions turned Mary Jane into John Wick? Respectfully, Isaiah Colbert? No, they fucking didn't. I'm pretty sure we all simultaneously agreed that we did not want to play as not only Mary Jane, but anyone who didn't have Spider-Man powers. Not only do I not have Spider-Man powers, but now I also can't hear shit? Do not make me fucking play as Haley, goddammit. Is this part of the game? I imagine this is part of the game. Okay. All sound is gone. I'm gonna wait and not get run over. Insomniac, if you absolutely insist on downgrading MJ's character model to the Uncanny Valley and want to force us to play her, can you at least keep it succinct? It's way too obvious how poorly masked the unnecessary content is when I have to go 3 different spots in a single location as this character in order to progress the story. I'm willing to negotiate. There's no way she's been with Peter this long and he hasn't made something for her, right? Something better than a pistol web shooter / taser? Give her whatever that is, then limit her levels and travels to a point A to point B. Not A to B to C to D to E. Similarly, one of the biggest gripes I had with this game was some of the narrative choices made to progress the story. Of course, it's a bit simpler, and having said gripes about a game that is probably more marketed towards teenagers than a dude in his mid-20s may be asking a bit much in terms of a story with no soft spots to poke at, but you can't take one of the most iconic superheroes of all time and tell a new story without getting some old fans along the way to criticize everything that you do.
Fuck you!
That being said, y'all really couldn't have had Spider-Man and Kraven duke it out for a bit before you completely embarrass my boy? I mean, was his spider sense taking a day off? How does the biggest dude in the room, with the biggest knife in the room, manage to slip Peter's peripheral vision and he straight up gets stabbed?
That's some neat trick. That sense of yours.
I mean, on God, this is probably the most pathetic Spider-Man has ever been. He might as well have been supervising Harry while he fought everyone off. Yes, I get it, the spider sense isn't perfect, and sure, Toby didn't see the blade coming either. But him and his other spider buddy were having a moment, and even then, Toby didn't die. Of all Spider-Man's foes in crazy-ass battles, he gets done in by some crazy swamp uncle with a Bowie knife. It's so bad, and what makes it worse is it's the foundation for the reason why the second half of the game even takes place at all. The entire city of New York fell into chaos, and thousands of people probably died because Spider-Man couldn't perform at the level of a drunken cowboy back in 1893. Other shortcomings of this game include the entire carnival section, some of the worst suits I've ever seen, the parry mechanic, and some of the unbearable, sometimes game-breaking glitches and errors that the game experienced upon launch. And I know, while this sounds like a lot to bring it down, it just goes to show that the fact that it's sitting in top 5 means that the good outweighs the bad by that much. It has one of the best feeling introductions of any game I've played in recent memory. Swinging next to Miles, with that opening music playing in the background, couldn't have been choreographed with this transition any better than it was. Just you and your boy about to fuck shit up in the best way possible. I'm really glad they didn't shy away from some of the grittier scenes, too. Like when Venom bit Kraven's fucking head off. I'm insanely stoked to see Carnage come in the form of what will likely be DLC, and excited to see what other stories might be explored. While I'm very much a narrative-driven gamer that loves to experience the story side of things, Insomniac's Spider-Man is one of the rarest exceptions in that I will continue to go back simply because the game itself is fun to play, aside from the story progression. And like I said, I hit 100% on this game before the 72-hour mark, and it felt nearly effortless. I give Spider-Man a rock-solid 8 out of 10.
All I want is to save you! I'm the hero! I don't get saved!
The next rung on this ladder is labeled Baldur's Gate 3. And I know, this may be a bit polarizing already, considering it's one of the most popular games of the early decade, and having gotten so much attention on social media for its high detail and humorous encounters with NPCs, not to mention it's a titan against Tears of the Kingdom for Game of the Year, which, spoiler alert, isn't in the lineup simply because I haven't played it. What might piss you off even more to hear is that I haven't actually finished it yet.
What the fuck?
Before you go skipping along the rest of the video to see what I might have placed above it, just hear me out on my reasonings. But what gives me the right? Honestly, not a whole lot. But I do think the fact that I've played for about 36 hours, and that's 10 more hours than I have in Spider-Man 2, and I, again, have 100% completion in that game, that I can stand to say a thing or two about Baldur's Gate. Before its inevitable appraisal, I want to get some of the things I struggled with right out the gate.
Nice.
This game is unlike any other game I've played. I mean, it's very much basically like a turn-based RPG, but there's such a high level of detail to it that it feels like I've never played a video game in my life before. Playing this game made me feel like chess was designed for ages 4 to 7. And it took a great long while before I actually felt like I had a handle on the game. About 3 to 5 hours before I could say I was beginning to feel comfortable when I booted it up. And maybe it wouldn't have been so bad, but the game gives so little direction as to how to play, it's like it assumes that if you're playing this game, you've played other games like it. Maybe it's just me eating my words here from the past. I've been pretty adamant about games not treating you like a child and holding your hand through every little corner to make sure that you're not screwing things up. Oh, puzzles.
Bet we could swing across that, lift thing.
Gantry.
Gantry. Thanks.
But that's kind of what I needed here. Perhaps, in truth, there's a delicate balance of teaching the player how to adequately play the game, but also allowing them to fuck shit up on their own and allowing them to feel that accomplishment. Of course, the game could never teach me everything that there is to know about this game. Most people would probably turn it off if it tried to take the time to do that because, as I said, it took me about 5 hours to finally get comfortable enough to where I wasn't feeling completely lost every time I jumped back in. On top of the sheer difficulty to just get a handle on things, the game also punishes harshly. This ain't your cocky, I'm the real hero storyline.
You're not the real heroes. I'm the real hero.
If you choose dialogue options that make you appear better than the person you're in an argument with, you either better be ready to square up or live with the consequences.
Warm, wet tentacles wrap themselves around your head, and for the first time in your life, you're perfectly happy.
No way. No, dude, come on. God damn it. Well, that's the end of the game. Roll the fucking credits. Where did it autosave? Oh my god, bro. Come on. For fuck's sake.
This is where I discovered the method known as save scumming. Save scumming is, from my understanding, the act of pressing F5, which quick saves, after any minor event or before any confrontation to ensure that if you happen to mess up badly enough, you can always go back and try again. The reason why it's so prevalent and deserves its own term, because as previously stated, this game punishes you significantly and it does not autosave often at all. If you are not on top of your shit, that's just one of the many ways the game punishes you. Oh, so sorry you lost your main character and one of your others died and is about to fucking explode half of the map because they have a magic cancer. You want to try again? Sure, looks like the last time it autosaved was 3 hours ago before you even got off work to play the goddamn game. All things considered, this game did eventually grow on me, and it's been fairly considerable. I didn't have the largest interest in it before, and even then, it was waning for a few hours in, but the game does a really good job of setting up the story, and it made me want to find out how things were going to go. Sure, turn-based isn't entirely my thing, but it's really hard not to be impressed at the myriad of choices at your disposal on not only items and effects on your characters, but your approach to every situation. The game is heavily based on the tabletop RPG known as Dungeons & Dragons, and if you're creative enough, you can come up with some pretty unique tactics to defeat your opponents, or get what you want in general. The amount of time that a single playthrough takes is insane. According to HowLongToBeat.com, a single playthrough can take anywhere between 55 and 103 hours, with completionist playthroughs being around 140 hours. Most of the characters are likable so far. There seems to be a strange sexual obsession over Asterion. Maybe it isn't sexual, but I think it might be. And sure, while you gotta be able to back up what you say in dialogue options, the dialogue options themselves are insanely attuned to real-life responses. Never have I ever played a game where the dialogue options were exactly how I pictured my immediate response being in my head before even seeing the options appear on screen.
Get out!
Or what? Tell me where Marina is. Or what? Yeah, that was my first...
Oh, the cocky ones are my favorite to chew on.
All too often, I feel like in games that have this design, either the option of what you'd like to actually say isn't available.
Masako, the internal neuroweb is ready if you want to send out the candidate.
I hope you're ready for this.
I told you guys I'm not fucking doing this. Oh my god, dude. For real? I have to fucking do this? So much for being a fucking RPG.
You always have a choice. You just have to decide which set of consequences you prefer to live with.
I will literally kill everyone in this building.
Leading you down a more linear path and eliminating a bit of the RPG element, or it's a truncated version of what the actual responses will be, so you interpret it as one way, and the game spits it out in a completely different tone than what you expected. Luckily, that hasn't been the case with Baldur's Gate, and if it has, it's so minimal that I can't even think of a single instance where it was noteworthy. Games of this scope and quality are very few and far in between. Not only is there a substantial amount of content, but the game was released at a $60 price point in a world where companies are taking advantage of the $70 price point. The least that we can hope for is a game like Baldur's Gate once every year, and that's a good year. But we sure as hell aren't getting anything like that from studios like Bethesda anymore.
First order. There's a meeting starting soon, and I need you to pick up the coffee order at Terra Brew.
What?
Fairly easy, so you shouldn't be able to screw it up.
Aside from the rough start, given that I still have much to explore in Baldur's Gate, I give Baldur's Gate 3 an 8 out of 10.
Gods, I want to ride you till you see stars.
They warned me Satan would be attractive. Let's go!
Coming in for the halfway point is the remake of Resident Evil 4. This game was so much fun to play and has very little to complain about. If it weren't for the fact that this story had been told to some capacity before, it very well could have been a contender for the first place on this list. Sure, it's a little bit difficult to move around and play effectively, but that's kind of the style. It's not built like your Call of Duty first-person shooters, but it's sure as hell come a very long way from what it used to be. I still remember when older Resident Evil games wouldn't allow you to shoot and move at the same time, so you had this wonky playstyle of standing, aiming, shooting, then retreating to a safe distance to rinse and repeat. Still not sure why this was a thing in previous games, but knowing that that is the alternative, I'm very thankful to be playing a game far more fluid nowadays. One of the only things I can reflect on being something I was even remotely disappointed in was the game's pacing towards the end was a little hard to gauge. I spent all the resources I'd been saving up to that point about 5 chapters too early. It was fortunate that I got to play much more than I thought I was going to, but the entire time I had this build-up in my mind that the grand finale was right around the corner. In a way, it was kind of exhausting, and with each new chapter started, I got more and more disappointed in myself for not saving the resources for new items that were being unlocked along the way. As I mentioned previously, the game is so fun to play and I didn't want the story to end. The environment and the feel of the game is just so satisfying, and because it's so indescribable, there may be some deep bias in me somewhere, but the original Resident Evil 4 was a game I tried to play back in 2016 when it got ported over to Xbox One, and I just couldn't do it. The old graphics, the lack of saturation, and old mechanics made it impossible for me to spend more than 20 minutes at a time, and I was never excited to get back into it. This is a complete 180. On the new RE engine, I knew that this was going to be so much fun, and the game looks absolutely incredible. Most side assignments or missions never felt too laborious, and it wasn't a chore for me to want to explore my surroundings. Since Resident Evil 2's remake, I've appreciated that the map will tell you if there are still items in that area that need to be found before the area is clear, and since they've transferred that into the rest of the remakes, it allows me to complete as much as I can in each area without accidentally overlooking something and then having to go back for it later. The classic overdramatic action sequences and dialogue are somewhat nostalgic, even for me, in that I wasn't a huge fan of these things when I was a kid, but I can certainly appreciate the influence that Hollywood had on the development of these characters and stories.
Training's not done. Last lesson starts right now.
Holy shit.
Nah. Time for the teacher to be taught.
Yeah, you tell him, Leon.
Such confidence. Bring it, rookie!
While the dialogue is super cheesy at times, and the action scenes are completely unnecessarily big and excessive, it's part of the charm that makes a Resident Evil game for me. Lastly, it's kind of hard to explain the difference of why playing as Ashley is more enjoyable than playing a scene of MJ in Spider-Man. It may have to do with the motivation of the character, or the fact that the character is completely powerless against a very tough enemy and it's actually terrifying. Entire games have been more or less built around this premise, like Outlast, where the main protagonist can only run and hide, whereas with something like MJ, the character just seems to be completely out of her depth, out of her own volition. The enemies aren't threatening to the original protagonist, so it's such a major downgrade that you're just waiting for the moment where you can kick ass again. It feels much more authentic here. The Resident Evil 4 remake was such an awesome addition to the Resident Evil series, and definitive retelling of the story that they're trying to build within the Resident Evil universe. Considering this game had extremely little to absolutely no glitches that I experienced day one, this game was one of the most pleasurable experiences I've had all year, let alone recent years. The remake of Resident Evil 4 is well deserving of a 9 out of 10.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
We're almost at the top, and if you've been following my channel this year at all, which is unlikely, you would know that I had to put this somewhere at the top. And that is Alan Wake 2. There's a very specific point I want to make here, so I'm actually going to start with the good this time. Alan Wake 2 is an expansion in the Remedy connected universe that links the original Alan Wake game as well as the Control video game together. There are little nuances that are worth knowing about Remedy and their other connections outside of these games, like the fact that Remedy created the Max Payne character, specifically the creative director Sam Lake, who was the original model for that character. The Alex Casey character written by Alan Wake being an obvious homage to the Max Payne character, Sam Lake even reprises his role as this gritty detective with his own likeness modeling the character in the new Alan Wake game. There is so much story here and behind the scenes that it treats the consumer with those that want to consume all aspects of the story. It feels like such a reward when the game gives you a little wink in the form of a document reading about something that references an instance from another game. It's one of the most satisfying experiences for myself, and I think it's a bit of a winning formula considering the success of the early Marvel Cinematic Universe. While I always thought that Control was a bit too convoluted to enjoy it the way that it probably should be, it appears that even with my complicated understanding of the events that took place in Control, it was a major benefit and experience for me when I was playing Alan Wake 2. The twists and turns that Alan Wake 2 took were absolutely neck-breaking and mind-blowing all at the same time. I know that there's a slew of games out there that kind of leave you on the edge of understanding until the end when you bring everything together, but it's purely like thinking you have it all figured out, and then you find one small thing that changes the entire story and it works.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
Truly, I think Sam Lake is a bit of a modern-day genius with his storytelling ability, and while the acting and portrayal in some areas may not be Oscar-worthy like Last of Us or God of War, the Remedy-connected universe, if not the Alan Wake series, belongs among the titans of some of the best stories ever told in video games. And of course, it's always a pleasure playing a game that is so visually pleasing. The graphics are truly a spectacle among modern-day games. It's just a shame I can't see their full potential on the way my rig is currently built. And there's no way I'm not going to mention the most awesome musical experience I've ever seen or been a part of. Musicals have never been my thing. In fact, I've found them pretty silly personally. But something about this whole scene, the music accompanying it, it was just so much fun. So visually gratifying, I was beaming the entire time. Easily my favorite part of the game. So with all these positives, it's got to be a 10 out of 10, right? Well, not exactly. Unfortunately, the game wasn't as fun to play as I was anticipating. Of course, the story was my main drive, and the game was absolutely terrifying, which was the whole point, and I loved that it did it so well. But there are just a few things that didn't sit right with me when I was playing. First of all, I'm not entirely sure why this didn't occur to me until sometime deep into the gameplay, but this is essentially a clone of Resident Evil's third-person over-the-shoulder shooter-style games. The safe rooms, the inventories, the stash, all of it. And with that, they have a lot to live up to, in which this being their first edition of that makes it a little forgivable, but it has a long way to go before they reach the perfected state of what Resident Evil has accomplished. Especially with the movement of the enemies, specifically the wolves. In heightened state of fear, I'm already stressing the hell out of myself to fight the enemy in front of me and stay alive, but when the wolves were able to turn on a dime in a physically impossible manner, it takes me out of the game just to simply note how unfair the fight is. Oh my god. Bro, this is so fucking stupid. Get over here. Whether or not this is intentional isn't clear, but it plays in a way that seems that it's just poorly optimized and like it was unintentional from how they wanted the enemies to interact with the character. Essentially, it just seems like an unpolished, unfinished version of the gameplay. Which leads me into my biggest disappointment about the game. The game was clearly not ready for release. I understand trying to time everything perfectly, and with it being a horror game and releasing it right around the biggest horror-themed holiday of the year, it makes sense that it would be introduced at this time, but it's on the same playing field of frustration as Spider-Man, where it just very clearly feels like it wasn't ready to be released. There are so many visual glitches, the mechanics are stiff and need refinement in order to not be so cumbersome. It takes away from the greatest strength, which is the immersion in the nightmarish environment and absorbing the story around you. Do that.
Shutting it!
I'm gonna shut your door, big guy.
Play cards in the general store!
Is he glitched? He's fucking glitched. Alright, well. Oh, and he's and he's gone. Alright. This, coupled with the insane amount of cheap jump scares that were added, especially when finding Cynthia Weaver, the game just had me shaking my head. I mean, for Christ's sakes, the amount of spelling errors and typos alone that I found in the game had me feeling like I was playing a rough draft of a high school essay. Between? What is this? I don't even... Here? Was that a... What the fuck? I would love to give this game a 9 out of 10 placement and put it among my best games ever played, but I just can't bring myself to do so in the state that I played it in. I think it has the potential to fix its mistakes through patches and refinements after the fact, but that's not what customers should be expecting when they play an officially released title. It saddens me to even say this about Remedy, given that I'm such a fan of their work thus far, but I can only give this game an 8 out of 10. I hope that the success of this title, even being included in the Game of the Year lineup, allows Remedy to acquire the resources necessary to create magnificent, more complete games in the future. That being said, the story is far from over, and I'm thoroughly excited to see where Sam Lake takes us next.
I read this somewhere. Where am I? Who am I? Alan Wake. Alan Wake? That's a strange name. Wait, that sounds like a character. I write that name up. I make that name up. You don't have a clue. You're lost. You lost the plot. I'll show you.
All right, madams and sirs, here we are. The #1 spot. It's been a hell of a ride so far this year, but this is the decision I've made, and while there was a bit of challenge being able to define it, I know in my heart that it's true. It's not even a game in the Game of Year awards lineup, which I think already classifies it as being severely overlooked. But before I reveal the lead spot, I'd like to give a shout out to some honorable mentions. El Paso Elsewhere, developed by Strange Scaffold, a great indie game with some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in my entire life. Better than most AAA games. I would love to see what else they can come up with. Hogwarts Legacy. Not as big of a Harry Potter fan as some of the other billions of people on this planet, but this is truly a great game that does a magnificent job of creating an environment that is reminiscent of the movies, while also making game mechanics that don't absolutely suck ass. In fact, they're pretty damn good for a video game adaptation. Dead Space came out this year as another remake, and it was good. Nothing too new, but it was fun to fill that part of my nostalgia trip and relive the game with much better graphics. I'll be excited if they decide to continue remaking the rest of the series. Okay, without any further ado, the #1 game of 2023 goes to none other than Sledgehammer and Activision's Modern Warfare 3. While I know it seems a little unconventional, let me explain. It has the most epic campaign to date, even beating the original Modern Warfare 2 campaign. With all new multiplayer maps, the zombies mode being back and better than ever, there really isn't a reason it shouldn't be on top.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap.
All right, I'm joking. You can relax.
Oh, no, you cannot joke about that.
Yeah, that's not funny.
There's no way I would give that garbage a top 5 list other than maybe noting it in a top 5 worst games of the year. The real game of the year that I would like to award goes to a game that I had such limited knowledge about previously, I was almost sure I would never have any interest in it. It might have been the perfect storm for me falling in love with the game.
I'm gonna come.
My game of the year for 2023 is Final Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy took me by complete surprise. After completing Control, hoping to add something to my docket so that there wouldn't be any dead upload time on my channel, a friend of mine had recommended to me that I give it a shot. I was under the original impression that it was a turn-based game, and as I previously mentioned, I don't quite get excited over turn-based games. However, it was explained to me that this was more of an open-world exploration/story mission-based game, so I was willing to give it a shot. And boy, did I shoot.
Shoot. Fucking shoot.
I mean, the first 2 hours of this game provides some of the craziest story setup I've ever seen in my life. It's a bit hard to put into words how excited I got over playing the game and watching the cinematic fights and cutscenes the game provided. If you haven't seen my playthrough on it, I highly suggest you watch it. Or if you don't want to watch mine, just watch anyone's. The visuals alone are so spectacular, it's hard not to appreciate the effort that went into them alone. My jaw crashed through the floor at the setup of this game, and it only continued to develop into one of the greatest stories I've ever witnessed in my gaming history. It took me a while to realize it, but the game is built like a 3D anime. The characters are all so pretty and easy to look at, the mannerisms of the characters mimic those of anime, and the action scenes are so over the top, it scratches an itchy part of the brain that just has been deprived of the ridiculousness that this game brings forward. It may be the fatigue of how many words I've written in this script by now, but I'm having a bit of a hard time finding the words to truly appreciate the game. It was so great and is among the greatest games I've ever played in my life. A true diamond in the rough, and I really do look forward to a time where I can go back and re-experience the game. I found a video on YouTube that I've since lost track of, but this guy was mad. He was like mad. Like he was calling anyone and everyone who enjoys Final Fantasy a dumb fucking loser and that you'd have to be incredibly stupid to purchase the game. But most of his content was based over these insanely strong opinions, so I assume he's taken the route of rage baiting people to get his engagement, which makes him a bit of a cunt, but I don't see his uploads anymore, so.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
Most of the gripes I could find from other people about Final Fantasy is that most long-term fans of Final Fantasy seem to see the game as a huge step away from the original Final Fantasy type games. At least, I think so. I can't be bothered to watch these videos as I'm sure I'm gonna get pissed, but here's what I feel. You already know that I love the cutscenes. Over 20 hours to watch, and they look so good. Not everyone likes that. Some people want to play games and not watch them. That's never been something that's bothered me, and here, it's a big reason why I love the game so much. The fact that it isn't turn-based is what got me to want to play it. It kind of seems like, with my limited knowledge of the series as a whole, that this game was meant to bring in a new audience, and it definitely achieved that purpose with me. I've heard that Final Fantasy VII is also a great game and the remakes are making them worth going and experiencing the stories. I'll be loading those up on my docket for 2024. There were also gripes about how easy the game is, and I can't lie, the game basically plays itself. There's a particular item early on in the game that allows your character to do combos by himself, and all you have to do is hit the attack button on the controller. Early on, the controller scheme was definitely a bit of getting used to, and so when this advantage brought itself forward, I didn't shy away from it. It was pure laziness on my part, but it didn't at all make me feel like I was missing out on a good game. The visuals during combat were extremely fun to watch, and I never didn't feel like a badass. Maybe it would have been more gratifying to some extent to not use these items that gave me such an advantage, but it's not something I regret looking back at my time playing. The one gripe that I do have was the amount of extended detours in the game that took place during the main missions. There was a good amount of hours spent in the game that were purely unnecessary. They added little to the character development. While the elements of the story may seem important, it wouldn't be lost on the consumer to see it simply referenced as a task that another character did. The sheer amount of fetch quests just weren't needed at all. Without a single one of these wonky-ass interactions with the characters, the game could have been nearly perfect. I mean, it's not like there wasn't enough content either. On top of 20 hours of cutscenes, there was about the same amount in gameplay, just through main missions. The side missions clearly weren't as polished as the main missions, and that's why I didn't partake in any. But the errand missions, where the main character has to deliver an item or go talk to someone in a location that has nothing to do with the development of the main storyline, just irks me because I was so excited to keep moving forward, and it just felt like a futile hindrance. It's for this sole reason that I can't give it a perfect 10 out of 10, but it comes closer than most. This game produced tears of joy and sadness both while I was watching some of these cutscenes, some intense cinematic fights that had me sweating and breathing heavy. Any game that can produce these physical things out of me just simply sitting in a chair staring at a screen is so impressive to think about. I had a crazy attachment to this game develop over the course of my time playing it. Even without the side missions and content I didn't even bother to explore, this game is still that good. Again, it could be that I was so unexpectedly impressed by it that it shot its way up this year's ladder, but I'm proud to say that Final Fantasy XVI was my game of the year for 2023. So that's all of them. What did you think of my list? Do you agree? Probably not. So let me know down in the comments of any important aspects you think I might have missed or what games you would have placed in the top 5. I appreciate you taking the time to skip through my video and completely disregard everything that I said for each game. And to those that actually sat through the whole thing, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I ask that you subscribe if you like to see games like these. I love playing them and I love sharing my experiences with other people. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on your way out the door, I'd appreciate that too. If you plan on sticking around, I hope you see me in the next one. Thanks again.
You gotta figure it out.
this song to its end.